we don't know who the president is selecting. And we have a pool in the office. So one of the guys on my team who covers the U.S. really has this sort of secret bet on that not so secret bet, but he thinks it's going to be Waller. Of course, I mean, if you look at Polymarket now, Warsh is in the lead, but there's been so much volatility. I think partly because Waller would be independent, right? On the other hand, at the moment, he is talking about the fact that we have a weak labor market and the fact that we should look through tariffs. And so, who knows? Maybe he will convince the president today.
We got starting to get some more economic data now that the government is reopened. We had some labor data yesterday. What did you make of the labor data for, I guess, October and November?
Yes. So, look, it certainly justifies the rate cut that they did earlier this month, that the Fed did earlier this month. I'm not sure what to make of the 4.6% unemployment rate. I want to see the December data before I jump to conclusions, right, whether or not we're on this upward trajectory with regard to that. But if you look at all of the little underlying features of the household survey, right? You have a higher number of unemployed, a slightly higher number of part-time for economic reasons. So all the little things around the edges from the household survey suggest more weakness. And then, of course, if we look at the establishment survey, we see jobs growth added in construction and healthcare. And so that is rather narrow. On the other hand, the diffusion index was at 56.8, right? So indicating that there are more companies adding jobs than subtracting.
Tomorrow we're going to get CPI data. What do you expect to see there on the inflation front?
So we're expecting about 50 basis points of the inflation tomorrow to come from tariffs. Okay. But we do expect that the biggest part of the tariff pass-through is going to happen in the first quarter. And the reason for that is that we're getting the One Big Beautiful Bill Act tax refunds. Households will be more flush. If you were a CEO and you'd been holding back, passing through some of the tariffs, wouldn't you do it at the time when consumers are more able to bear that increase? I would if I were running a company.
Constance Hunter with us with EIU as we look at the economics of America. I want to talk, Peter Berezin of BCA, bank credit analyst, has just been on fire recently. And you mentioned healthcare workers. A lot of people, including BCA, are partitioning healthcare employment buoyancy, childcare employment buoyancy, and everything else is flat on their back. Is it constructive to partition your labor analysis like that? The haves and the job have-nots?
Yeah. So I would say the way to look at that is the labor market, except for healthcare and human services, is in a no hire, no fire situation. Now, the BLS for the past 8 years, every 2 years, they do a forecast of what are the jobs that are going to be added in the economy over the next decade. And for the past 8 years, that report has suggested that healthcare is where most of the jobs growth would be because of our demographics. So it shouldn't surprise us that in a period where the economy is slowing, that healthcare would be the part that continues to grow. And look, a job is a job. These are still people getting new jobs, being able to spend money they didn't have previously. But in terms of when we combine what BCA is doing with something like the youth unemployment rate and the unemployment rate for young people, college grads, non-college grads, if they don't want to go into healthcare, there's not a lot of new jobs being created for them.
So, I mean, it kind of feels like the labor market isn't as strong as the unemployment, I guess, survey number. It does feel like there are, again, if you're coming out of college, what I understand, very difficult to find jobs here. Is that typical? Is that unusual?
So it's typical of a turning point in the labor market, right? So I think it's too early to say, oh, it's all because of AI. We don't really have enough data to say that. There's obviously anecdotal data, but at turning points, you do see firms say, you know what, I'm going to cut back on hiring young people. I'm not going to fire the people I have, but I'm not going to hire more people.
Governor Waller over at the Death Star on CNBC moments ago, he's doing a really quality interview there before his interview with President Trump. He says inflation pretty well anchored around 2%. Says the labor market very soft. He says U.S. close to zero jobs growth. And he models out a center tendency of 3 rate cuts into next year. Is that where Constance Hunter is?
So we have two, and we actually have them in the second half of the year, again, because we expect there to be a lot of buoyancy in the first quarter because
the stimulus.
Because of the tax refunds, and then also some of the give back from the fourth quarter of this year when we had the government shutdown is going to get passed into that first quarter. Now, if the labor market deteriorates further, right? If we see another 0.2 upward movement on the unemployment rate, if we see soft payrolls in December, I could see a January rate cut, but that is not our baseline.